Picture this scenario. Every morning at exactly 6:47 a.m., while you're hitting snooze for the third time, your wealthy neighbor Sarah is sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a simple notebook, spending exactly 15 minutes doing something that looks completely boring from the outside. No fancy apps, no complicated spreadsheets, no motivational podcast blasting in the background. Just her, a pen, and 15 minutes of what most people would consider the most mundane activity imaginable. But here's what will blow your mind. This ridiculously simple 15-minute ritual is the exact psychological mechanism that separates people who build generational wealth from people who stay trapped in the middle-class money cycle forever. And the science behind why it works reveals everything wrong with how most people think about getting rich. My name is Alex, and I spend way too much time analyzing the daily habits of wealthy people and why tiny behavioral differences compound into massive wealth gaps over time. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right financially but somehow never breaking through to the next level, or if you've ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others work just as hard but stay stuck in the same financial patterns, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up because today we're diving into the 15-minute psychological shift that creates millionaires. Here's the thing that absolutely blows my mind about wealth building. Everyone's looking for the big secret, the investment strategy, the side hustle, or the career move that's going to change their financial life. But after studying hundreds of wealthy individuals, I've discovered that the difference between rich and middle class isn't what they do with their money, it's what they do with their minds. And specifically, it's a 15-minute daily mental exercise that rewires their brain to think like someone who builds wealth instead of someone who just earns money. Let me explain what Sarah is actually doing during those 15 minutes because it's going to sound almost stupidly simple. She's writing down three things: what she learned about money yesterday, what financial decision she needs to make today, and what one action she can take to build wealth instead of just maintaining her lifestyle. That's it. No complicated formulas, no market analysis, no vision boarding. Just three simple questions that force her brain to think like a wealth builder every single day. But here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. Sarah isn't just journaling, she's literally rewiring her neural pathways to prioritize wealth building over wealth spending. Every day, she's training her brain to look for money lessons, identify financial opportunities, and focus on building rather than consuming. While most people wake up thinking about what they need to buy, where they need to go, and what they need to do, Sarah wakes up thinking about how to grow her money. This might sound like new age nonsense, but the neuroscience is rock solid. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity, which means it physically changes based on what you repeatedly think about. When you spend 15 minutes every morning thinking about wealth building, you're literally creating new neural pathways that make you more likely to notice financial opportunities, make better money decisions, and think long-term instead of short-term. Compare this to how most middle-class people start their day. They wake up already thinking about their problems, their bills, their boss, their commute, their to-do list. They're training their brain to focus on consumption and problems rather than creation and opportunities. By the time they get to work, their mental bandwidth is already consumed by reactive thinking instead of proactive wealth building. Here's what makes this 15-minute rule so psychologically powerful. It's not about the information you write down, it's about the mental state you're creating. When you consistently ask yourself wealth building questions, you start unconsciously looking for wealth building answers throughout the day. It's like buying a red car and suddenly noticing red cars everywhere. They were always there, but your brain wasn't tuned to see them. Wealthy people understand something that middle-class people miss. Your financial results are a direct reflection of your daily mental focus. If you spend your mental energy thinking about spending, bills, and problems, you'll get really good at spending, worrying about bills, and creating problems. If you spend your mental energy thinking about building, growing, and opportunities, you'll get really good at those things instead. Let me give you a specific example of how this plays out in real life. Last week, Sarah wrote in her journal that she learned about real estate investment trusts from a podcast. Today's financial decision was whether to increase her investment contributions or pay extra on her mortgage. Her wealth-building action was to research 3 REIT options during her lunch break. Contrast this with her middle-class neighbor Mike, who spent his mornings scrolling social media, checking sports scores, and complaining about traffic. By 9 a.m., Mike's brain was already in reactive consumptive mode. When the same real estate investing opportunity crossed his path, his brain didn't even register it as relevant because he wasn't primed to notice wealth-building information. This is the psychological difference between rich and middle class. It's not about intelligence, education, or even starting capital. It's about what you train your brain to focus on every single day. Wealthy people have programmed their minds to be wealth detection machines. Middle class people have accidentally programmed their minds to be consumption and problem detection machines. But here's where the 15-minute rule becomes truly powerful. It doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you act. When you consistently focus on wealth building first thing in the morning, you start making different choices throughout the day. Instead of automatically buying lunch, you might pack food and invest the difference. Instead of upgrading your phone, you might keep the old one and put that money toward assets. These aren't conscious decisions requiring massive willpower, they're natural extensions of a brain that's been trained to think about building wealth rather than spending money. The 15-minute rule creates what psychologists call cognitive priming. Your morning focus literally primes your brain to make wealth-building decisions for the rest of the day. Here's something that will probably surprise you about wealthy people. They're not constantly thinking about money in the way middle-class people think about money. Middle-class people think about money as something to be managed, budgeted, and spent carefully. Wealthy people think about money as something to be grown, multiplied, and put to work. This fundamental difference in money relationship shows up in everything they do. When a middle-class person sees a $500 expense, they think about whether they can afford it within their budget. When a wealthy person sees a $500 expense, they automatically think about what $500 invested could become over time. Same expense, completely different mental framework. The 15-minute rule trains your brain to think like the wealthy person. When you start every day asking yourself how to build wealth, you gradually shift from a spending mindset to a building mindset. This isn't positive thinking or manifestation, it's practical neurological training that changes how you process every financial decision. Let me break down the 3 questions more specifically because each one serves a different psychological function. What did I learn about money yesterday? Trains your brain to continuously absorb financial education. Most people go through their entire lives learning about money accidentally, through crisis and mistakes. Wealthy people learn about money intentionally, every single day. This question forces you to become a student of wealth building rather than just a participant. When you know you'll need to answer this question tomorrow morning, you start noticing money lessons everywhere. A conversation with a colleague becomes a lesson about workplace politics and career advancement. A news article becomes education about market trends. A purchase becomes data about your spending patterns. What financial decision do I need to make today? Shifts your brain from reactive to proactive money management. Most people make financial decisions when they're forced to, when the bill arrives, when the emergency happens, when the opportunity is about to disappear. Wealthy people make financial decisions proactively, when they have time to think clearly and research thoroughly. This question ensures that you're always moving your financial situation forward rather than just responding to external pressures. It could be something small like deciding whether to buy generic or brand name groceries, or something big like whether to refinance your mortgage. The key is training your brain to see every day as an opportunity to improve your financial position. What one action can I take today to build wealth instead of just maintaining my lifestyle? This is the most powerful question because it forces you to think beyond maintenance mode. Most middle-class people spend their entire lives in financial maintenance mode, paying bills, maintaining their lifestyle, solving money problems as they arise. Wealthy people spend their mental energy in building mode, creating new income streams, acquiring appreciating assets, developing skills that increase their earning potential. This question rewires your brain to look for building opportunities rather than just maintenance tasks. Here's what happens when you combine these 3 questions every morning for 15 minutes. Your brain starts operating like a wealth-building radar system. You begin noticing opportunities that were always there but invisible to your maintenance-focused mindset. You start making small daily choices that compound into massive long-term wealth differences. But here's the part that most people get wrong when they try to implement this rule. They think it's about finding the perfect answers to these questions. They spend 45 minutes researching optimal investment strategies or writing detailed business plans. They're missing the point entirely. The power isn't in the perfect answers, it's in asking the questions consistently. When you ask wealth-building questions every morning, your subconscious mind works on them all day. You don't need to solve complex financial puzzles in your 15-minute session. You just need to prime your brain to notice wealth-building opportunities throughout the day. Think of it like planting seeds in your subconscious. The morning questions are the seeds. Throughout the day, as you encounter different situations, conversations, and opportunities, those seeds start sprouting into insights and actions. By evening, you've made several wealth-building choices without even realizing it because your brain was primed to think that way. This is why wealthy people seem to effortlessly make good financial decisions, while middle-class people struggle with every money choice. It's not that wealthy people have better willpower or more financial knowledge. They've just trained their brains to automatically default to wealth-building thinking patterns. Let me give you a real example of how this compound effect works. Sarah has been doing her 15-minute routine for 2 years. Yesterday, she learned about tax loss harvesting from an article she read. Today's decision is whether to sell some underperforming stocks before year-end. Her action item is to call her accountant to discuss the tax implications. This seems like a small thing, but tax loss harvesting could save her $2,000 this year. Over a 30-year career, that knowledge and the habit of implementing it could save her $60,000 or more. Not because she's a tax expert, but because she trained her brain to continuously learn and apply wealth-building concepts. Meanwhile, Mike spent his morning reading about celebrity gossip and watching sports highlights. When tax loss harvesting information crossed his path, his brain wasn't primed to recognize it as valuable. He filtered it out as boring financial stuff that doesn't apply to him. Same information, completely different results based on morning mental priming. This is the compounding power of the 15-minute rule. Small daily shifts in thinking create massive long-term differences in wealth building. Not because of any single insight or decision, but because of thousands of slightly better choices made over years of wealth-focused thinking. But here's where most people sabotage themselves when they try to implement this rule. They make it too complicated. They think they need special notebooks, apps, or systems. They want to track their progress and measure their results. They turn a simple 15-minute mental exercise into a complex productivity system. The beauty of the 15-minute rule is its simplicity. Pen, paper, 15 minutes, 3 questions, that's it. The moment you start adding complexity, you create friction that makes it harder to maintain consistency. And consistency is everything with neurological programming. Your brain doesn't care if you have the most beautiful journal or the most sophisticated tracking system. It only cares about repetition. The same simple questions asked consistently every morning will rewire your neural pathways more effectively than the most elaborate financial planning system used sporadically. Here's another crucial element that separates successful implementation from failure. The 15 minutes needs to happen before you engage with any other information. Not after checking email, not after reading the news, not after scrolling social media. First thing, while your brain is still in its most neuroplastic state. When you start your day by consuming other people's priorities, emails, news, social media, you're training your brain to be reactive. You're literally programming yourself to respond to external stimuli instead of creating internal direction. The 15-minute rule only works if it's the first thing your brain encounters each day. This is why most people fail at morning routines. They try to add positive habits to an already reactive morning schedule. They want to do their wealth-building questions after they check their phone, read the news, and respond to urgent emails. By then, their brain is already in reactive mode and the priming effect is lost. Wealthy people understand that the first 15 minutes of mental activity set the tone for the entire day. They protect this time fiercely because they know it determines whether they'll spend their day building wealth or just managing life. Middle-class people give this time away to whoever screams loudest, their boss, the news media, social media algorithms. Let me address the obvious objection that's probably running through your mind right now. This sounds like a nice theory, but can 15 minutes really make that much difference? The answer lies in understanding compound effects, not just in money, but in psychology. Most people underestimate how much their daily thoughts and focus patterns affect their financial decisions. They think wealth building is about big moves, the right investment, the perfect business opportunity, the ideal career change, but wealth building is actually about thousands of small decisions made consistently over time. Every purchase decision, every career choice, every investment, every financial habit is influenced by your underlying money mindset. When you change your daily mental focus from consumption to wealth building, you influence every one of those thousands of decisions. The compound effect is massive, even if each individual choice seems small. Here's a concrete example of how this plays out. Sarah's daily 15-minute routine has trained her brain to think about opportunity cost. When she sees a $50 restaurant meal, her brain automatically calculates what $50 invested monthly becomes over 20 years. This isn't conscious math, it's automatic thinking pattern developed through daily practice. Because of this automatic thinking, Sarah naturally makes choices that prioritize building over consuming. She doesn't rely on willpower or strict budgets. Her brain has been programmed to find satisfaction in wealth building rather than wealth spending. The 15-minute daily practice created this programming. Mike, who hasn't trained his brain this way, sees the same $50 restaurant meal and thinks about whether he can afford it this month. His brain is focused on cash flow management rather than opportunity cost. He makes the consumption choice not because he's weak or undisciplined, but because his brain hasn't been programmed to automatically consider wealth-building alternatives. This is why wealthy people seem to effortlessly avoid lifestyle inflation, while middle-class people struggle with it. It's not about superior willpower, it's about different automatic thinking patterns created through consistent daily mental programming. The 15-minute rule also solves one of the biggest psychological barriers to wealth building, feeling like you don't know enough to start. Most people delay investing, starting businesses, or making financial improvements because they feel like they need more education first. They're waiting to feel confident before they begin building wealth. But the 15-minute rule flips this equation. Instead of learning first and acting later, you start with daily learning and daily action simultaneously. Every day you learn something small and take one small action. Over time, your knowledge and your wealth build together, creating confidence through experience rather than theory. This approach eliminates the paralysis that keeps most people stuck in financial mediocrity. You don't need to master investing before you start investing. You don't need a complete business plan before you explore business opportunities. You just need to learn something small and do something small every single day. The compound effect of daily learning and daily action creates expertise and wealth simultaneously. After 2 years of 15-minute morning routines, Sarah isn't just wealthier. She's also more financially educated than most people with formal business degrees. Not because she studied more, but because she consistently applied what she learned. Here's something that might surprise you about the psychological effects of this routine. The 15 minutes doesn't just change how you think about money, it changes how you think about everything. When you train your brain to look for opportunities and take daily action toward long-term goals, this thinking pattern spills over into every area of your life. Sarah has applied the same approach to her health, relationships, and career. Every morning she asks what she learned about fitness yesterday, what health decision she needs to make today, and what action she can take to improve her well-being. The 15-minute rule became a template for continuous improvement in every life area. This is why wealthy people often seem successful across multiple dimensions. It's not because they're naturally gifted or have unlimited time. They've developed a daily mental practice that programs their brain for building rather than maintaining in every area of life. But let me address the most common failure pattern I see when people try to implement this rule. They start strong for a few days or weeks, then gradually let it slide. They miss one day because they overslept, then miss another because they had an early meeting. Before they know it, they're back to their old morning routine and wondering why they can't stick to positive habits. The key to avoiding this pattern is understanding that the 15-minute rule isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. Missing one day doesn't ruin the neurological programming. Missing 7 days in a row does. The goal isn't to never miss a day, it's to never miss 2 days in a row. When you miss your morning routine, don't try to make up for it later in the day or promise to do better tomorrow. Just resume the next morning as if nothing happened. Your brain doesn't care about your missed days, it only cares about your consistent days. Protect the consistency more than the perfection. This is another area where wealthy people think differently than middle-class people. Middle-class people tend to be perfectionists who give up entirely when they can't maintain perfect consistency. Wealthy people understand that consistency beats perfection and progress beats paralysis. Sarah has probably missed her 15-minute routine hundreds of times over the past 5 years, but she's also done it consistently enough to rewire her brain toward wealth building. The missed days didn't matter, the consistent days compound into wealth. Here's the final piece of the psychological puzzle that makes the 15-minute rule so powerful. It creates what researchers call implementation intention, a specific plan for when and how you'll perform a behavior. Instead of vaguely wanting to get better with money, you have a specific daily practice that moves you toward that goal. Most people's financial goals are too abstract and distant to motivate daily behavior change. Build wealth or become rich doesn't give your brain clear direction for what to do each day. But spend 15 minutes every morning answering 3 questions is concrete, specific, and immediately actionable. This specificity is crucial for habit formation. Your brain needs clear triggers and rewards to automate new behaviors. The 15-minute rule provides both. The trigger is waking up, and the reward is starting your day with clarity and purpose around wealth building. Over time, this morning routine becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth. You don't need to motivate yourself to do it or remind yourself why it matters. Your brain automatically starts the day by thinking about wealth building because that's the pattern you've established. This is the difference between rich and middle class that most people never understand. It's not about dramatic lifestyle changes or complex financial strategies. It's about simple daily practices that program your brain to think like someone who builds wealth instead of someone who just earns money. The 15-minute rule works because it addresses the root cause of financial mediocrity, unfocused thinking. When you consistently focus your thoughts on wealth building, your actions naturally follow. When your actions consistently align with wealth building, your results inevitably change. If this video helped you understand why daily mental programming matters more than financial knowledge, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you learned about money yesterday, what financial decision you need to make today, and what one action you can take to build wealth instead of just maintaining your lifestyle.